TheChowTimePod. It's your host, Red. I got a video today from It's Complicated channel. I haven't actually watched this video yet, but I saw the title and I loved it. Is feminism for revenge? I really think it is. We didn't live in those times when women were so oppressed and things like that, but women use those arguments so strongly. And they seem to be like, oh, well, my ancestors were oppressed in a sense, so I have to oppress the oppressors in a sense now. So please like and subscribe down below. I'd really appreciate that. And let's get to that chow. It's chow time.
Why is it more socially acceptable for women to hate men than it is for men to hate women?
Because men are the devil.
Sounds like revenge off the bat, but we'll go on.
Because men are trash. Well, you know what? See, I'm contributing to the stigma. But there's more sus men than there are sus women. It's just facts, and that's all I gotta say about it. So it's a double.
Dude, that's facts. More sus men than sus women. Depending on what you mean by sus, I guess.
Standard because there's more sus men than there are sus women. The end.
Should anybody be hating anybody?
No.
Why are you so good, dude? Fucking It's Complicated is so good. We hate them because they suck. We hate them. Should you hate anybody? No.
If it's acceptable for women to hate men, how are men and women ever supposed to get together?
Good question. Good question.
It is a good question.
I don't think it's acceptable for women to hate men.
It's not really acceptable for women to hate men unless they give us a reason to.
I got a phone call.
Oh, God.
Should men be willing to go to war and fight for a country that hates them?
Absolutely not. I don't think war makes sense to me. It makes absolutely no sense to me.
I don't think war is ever the answer.
No, absolutely not.
Ever.
That is definitely a women answer. War is never the answer. You have no idea what the other side opposition is willing to do to you. So you have to protect yourself. Women are so naive when it comes to war and it comes to combat, right? If we didn't have the big sticks and the big armies that we have now, most other countries like Russia, China would walk all over us. And it's frustrating, really, that they don't see this, that men are laying their lives down for the freedoms that you have. We've put in massive amounts of funds and money into our defense system for the freedoms of everyone here. So
No.
I think men naturally are more athletic, they're stronger than women,
okay.
whether we like to admit it or not.
Like
it's the
physically,
truth.
yes.
If men are more valued in society than women, why would they be the first ones sacrificed in war?
Because they think they're more valued. They're being paid for more for everything. So you
What?
put your ass online.
Woman would never be seen fighting, right? So it was the man's job. It was their duty. Kind of, that was like the gender role then. I don't agree with it now, but then that's probably what it would have been.
Have you ever personally been denied the right to
It's funny they say that. I don't agree with it now, but if you ask them, would you be in the front lines for a war, they would say no.
vote?
Never. No.
No.
Would you give up your right to vote if it meant you got drafted into the army?
Yes.
Would you give up your right to vote if it meant you got drafted into the army?
No.
I probably would not vote.
What if I told you that voting rights originally required you to be drafted into war and own land?
I remember back in the beginning of the United States, that was the law. I remember that. I read it in
wow, she
books.
remembers that?
And I think
Damn.
sometimes to apply for colleges, boys have to, or if you want scholarship.
Yeah. Not even just apply for colleges. If you want to live a normal fucking life in America, you have to sign up for the selective draft.
Scholarships, you have to agree to be drafted as well, which I think is crazy.
Why are the men of today expected to pay for the sins of the men of the past?
Because they still keep making the same mistakes.
So is feminism about revenge?
No, feminism is about our right
Oh, shit. Damn, that was good. Damn, that was good.
be like allowed.
You can't contradict yourselves now, ladies. You can't contradict yourselves now. It's too late.
It's a base level of equality that we're trying to reach over here, and as long as we can get to that, then I think we're.
Oh, because we can't even get to the base level because it's not in a base level right now that women have compared to men. Like men and women are pretty equal in society nowadays.
But we got a long way to go. Yeah. Wage gaps and shit, absolutely whack.
Maybe more now than when it started. When it started, women just wanted to be recognized, but some like any other thing, like even religion or anything, it went overboard.
I think we hold a lot of grudges in our society, not just for men, but for a lot of things in the past, and we need to do a better job at staying present.
Yeah.
Why did the women of the past, who had less rights, also have less hatred for men than the women of today?
Because of social media.
Because they couldn't say anything.
Damn.
They were depending
good
on
answer.
the man. If they say anything, the man would just like beat her or stop paying for her or ignore her completely.
I think it was just a cultural thing. Now we are having more conversations about inequality, and a lot of emotions come up, and it turns into hatred.
We aren't having conversations about inequality. Women are having conversations about inequality. Men just go about life. We don't really compare if things are fair or not most of the time. We just take it as it is and just kind of try to work around it. Where women try to bend the rules and the laws around them to make things easier for them. Remember, they want equity. They want anything possible to give them enough stepping stool to be either equal to a man or above a man. Remember.
Hatred for a lot of people.
Why do you think that young women today feel more oppressed despite the fact that they didn't go through the hard times that older women supposedly went through?
Because of social media.
Yeah, damn.
Because young people today expect everything in there without working for it.
As we've seen times change, we've come to realize that we need to be treated equally, and with the creation of social media, there's come with a lot of like unrealistic standards for women, like along with beauty standards as well with like behavioral standards. Like there's a lot of pressure on women to act a certain way and look a certain way in media. Like that is one thing that you cannot deny. And whereas like, and yeah, there's the same thing with men where it's like six packs on billboards, but you see a lot more women plastered on these billboards with these like beauty standards and like behavioral standards, especially depicted in movies.
Why don't we acknowledge that if women had it bad, men usually had it worse? Weren't men also oppressed?
Well, there's always been an oppression because there's always been more like even white men. They were richer, and then there were richer and kings and this and that. So there's always been oppression, and
a status
there'll
of
probably
money.
always be, even though it's not a good thing.
Didn't men have harsher tasks placed upon them? Weren't men sacrificed under more hazardous conditions?
Perhaps.
Coal mines, fucking a lot of assembly lines. We lost a lot of good men in those things. Like construction working, building bridges, and skyscrapers. Like those are quite dangerous jobs. Nowadays, skyscrapers, we don't lose too many people because there's a lot more safety things to it. But coal mining, that was a guaranteed death in like your 50s.
But they also required women to do specific things, and they were not allowed to do things that men could do.
Back then, women weren't.
It's funny because the specific things that they're talking about for women is so much easier now. When you talk about cooking, cleaning, laundry, and all those things, men invented a lot of things to make these things easier for their wives. So in a sense, the housework that the women used to do back in the day is like 50% of what it is, of what it was, because now there's so many amenities that make it easier.
Allowed to work, they had to stay home, so that's why it seems like men had all the trouble.
They were expected to take care of their families, their wives, put food on the table, like back in the day, and they didn't, like, they just did it. They didn't care about, like, say, coal mining or, you know, like jobs like that.
Of
like
course.
They didn't think about the health stuff and like that.
Yeah,
Right, you know how many
men sacrifice their body, health, and their mental fortitude for their family. This is what men do.
Do you know how many men died building the
Yes.
Hoover Dam?
Yes, or the railway in BC. Like it was expected of them, and they just went to work, and the women were supposed to take care of the house. And
If society was controlled by men,
I really felt it was quite an even exchange back then. Men toiled and troubled with their bodies and minds to take care of the household. Women toiled and troubled in the house to take care of everything around it. It was a very equal exchange, in my opinion.
in a patriarchy, how would feminism be a movement that's gained traction without the help of men?
Check this out. You guys need to calm down on feminism because I'm not taking out trash.
I mean, that crane behind you, how'd you like to be crawling up on that construction crane right there?
Are we allowed to? I'll do it right now.
All right, let's do it.
I wouldn't.
It took men to back the women, but the women started it. I mean, we still, even though we're feminists, we still need men for just to have babies.
Patriarchy doesn't mean that men
Damn.
control every
love
single
that lady.
narrative out there. I just think that because men are typically in those more powerful positions, that's what creates it. But it doesn't mean women still don't have a voice.
Where did all these laws come from that protect women and punish men?
Overbalance. Before, nobody would, like, women were completely left to themselves, and they started taking power and they went overboard. We should be more in the middle.
I kind of disagree with it. Women are always somewhat protected throughout all of society. Yes, maybe they didn't have the same rights, but they were always protected, though.
I'm not sure exactly what laws you're talking about.
Well, like family courts, things like that.
I don't know where they came from, but actually when I was little, I really wanted to be a divorce attorney for dads because I felt it was really unfair that they weren't well represented.
Can you think of any behaviors people used to have that are no longer acceptable by today's standards?
Well, the husband were coming back from work and expecting his wife to be all dressed up, all with the meal on the table and the pipe and the glass of scotch, and it's too much.
You can't cancel somebody for something that, like, the cancel culture is like they go back and try to cancel people for stuff that happened.
He's correct. And how many tweets do we see like, oh, they pulled back a tweet from 15 years ago or 13 years ago and they said this. I mean, even Kevin Hart was part of this when he was making jokes about his son and stuff like that on Twitter, and everybody took offense to it. And that was a while ago, and then he got over it, and then all of a sudden they brought it back up again, like 10 years later. And I was just like, they just find whatever reason they can from anywhere from someone's past. Doesn't matter when, even when they were an idiot, when they were kids or whatever it was, it's their fault.
Happened a long time ago, but that was a different time, you know? So in that time, it was okay. Now,
see, this is hard for me to register just because I grew up with the Dave Chappelle show. That was literally the #1 show in America at the time. And it is still my #1 show, period. I still watch episodes like every other day here and there because it's hilarious. That era of comedy and how people were able to speak is, if anyone even thought to speak those ways now, would be canceled immediately. But back in those days, it was the norm. But for someone to use that past of when it was normal to use against someone else now when it's not normal, that's just malicious.
the cancel culture in this day and age, I feel like are a bit much, because some of the things are like, yeah, I understand, but some of the things are like, okay, like, you know.
So should people be held accountable by today's standards for behaviors that were acceptable at the time?
Yes, they should be held accountable.
Isn't that cancel culture?
Yes and no. I think there should be a conversation so
I
that
agree.
people can grow. But to expect people to have been perfect their entire life.
It's to be punishing them for what was good what was acceptable at the time. Now, it's just unreasonable.
Lives and to hold them to what happened in the past, I just think is not okay.
Nope.
History literally repeats itself from, like, crumbs to clothing to just everything, treatment of people, everything literally gets repeated.
Yep, I agree with that.
Today we have mass shootings, climate change, the culture war, inflation, poverty, human rights, cancel culture, etc. What's better and what's worse?
All of it is horrible, thanks to Joe Biden.
There's bad things in our history. There's good things in our history. There's bad things right now. There's good things right now. I think it's all about what you choose to focus on.
That's perspective.
What does your ideal society look like?
Great economy, low gas prices, low interest rates.
Freedom, people expressing who they are, not judging other people for who they are.
I'm more on her side. I like the lower taxes, the better economy than the actual. I don't care about people respecting each other. It is what it is.
Would you agree that when our country was founded, there were a lot of mistakes made, like, for example, slavery?
Yes.
Yes, but back then they didn't know any better.
It's hard to say mistakes were made because there weren't mistakes at the time. There weren't mistakes for a very long time until 16 presidents in. That's when they realized, oh, there might be an issue here. When you calculate it, that's a long time for it to suddenly change to not be okay. So for us to say, oh, they were built it on wrong things, it's like, it's hard. It's like, of course, hindsight is 20/20, but hindsight also is 10, 20, 100 years later.
Since we were a young country, would you compare those errors to the mistakes a young child makes until he's mature enough to know better?
Ooh, that's a tough question. Because we don't know what they were thinking back in the day.
To the mistakes a young child makes until he's mature enough to know better.
Up to a point, yes.
I agree.
Would you consider the society built by men in the past had mistakes as well?
Yes.
What are those mistakes?
Well, the fact that, the right to vote, you had to own a land, have a certain standing. The land is for everybody. So.
Again, hindsight 20/20. But when I think about it, it makes sense for you to be able to create laws and to vote on laws and to do things. You had to have some kind of skin in the game, right? Owning land, I guess that made sense because that's the first way that you can have skin in the game. You owning land, you owning a piece of America, makes sense that you can vote. Just saying. But then as it progressed, it makes sense to add more people to be able to vote too. This is where I'm saying, it all makes sense when you look at it, historically like that. It has to progress in a certain way. It couldn't just all know that everything was going to be how it is now, because they wouldn't. Freaking Washington did not expect freaking screens to be everywhere and, politicians to be so corrupt. That wasn't part of his vision.
So it's not just up to a few to decide what's going to happen.
Is it fair for the women of today to hate the men currently for the mistakes of the men in the past?
Ooh.
No.
Definitely not.
Do you think the women do hate the men of today, and if so, how?
Yes.
Maybe, because they're holding on to grudges of the past.
A lot of times we blame other people for our own emotions and things that we wish were different, rather than taking accountability ourselves.
But we need to look forward, move forward, and go from there.
Does a mother continue to resent her child for all of the bad things children do when they're developing?
No, I don't think so. A mother's love is unconditional.
It is sometimes that you do kind of hold on to things. That's why it's best to let things go on all levels. Mother, wife, sister, it doesn't matter. Just learn how to deal with it and let it go.
What?
I just recently got this advice from my cousin. So, my dad's he's remarried, and she was my dad's mistress, and now they're kind of remarried. And after my mom passed, I can literally not stand seeing her. I literally cannot. I love my dad. I want to go visit my dad often, but every time I go visit, she's there, and I don't want to talk to her. When my mother was alive, I was perfectly fine with that. But now that my mother's passed, I feel a way about it. I can't fully explain how I feel about it. I feel upset about it. And then I told my cousin about this. I was speaking with her, and she was just like, hate is only hurting you, right? And I was just like, I understand, but I can't change my emotions right now. And she was like, oh yeah, my husband was the same way with his aunt, but it took him like 30 years to get over it. And I straight up told my cousin, I was like, it's been 6 months. I think I'm okay to still feel the way I do feel about it. Like, I'm not like I want to be upset. So I understand how some of these women can feel. I don't want to be upset. I understand in my head it is more detrimental to me than it is to her or my dad. They don't really, I haven't even told my dad about this. But if I was just to let it go, and I was just to say, you know what? Mom's passed. I still love my dad. It is what it is. Just try to build relationships with it. It would be so much better for me. I know it would be. But fuck, I cannot, at least personally right now, I cannot move myself to that bridge yet. At least not yet. Maybe another year or two. But I totally understand how mistakes of someone's past can upset you to the point where you cannot forgive them. So if you were mistreated in a way by certain groups of people or I understand it. I fully understand it. Like, not that I agree with it, but I understand it.
Why do women say the past doesn't matter when it comes to their body count, but the past does matter when it comes to the historical oppression they didn't personally experience?
You need to answer this.
Oh, shit.
I don't understand what you're saying. I haven't got a clue what you're talking about. What's body count? Body weight? We're English, right? So body count's body weight, right?
Body count means how many people you've been with.
Oh, how many people I've been with? Oh. Why do women don't remember how many people we've been with?
Jesus.
Listen, no one needs to know how many people we've been with. That's secret to us, right? Like, I've been one man. I've got married today.
Oh, congratulations.
Married today.
Okay.
15 years, one man. He don't need to know my history.
Check this out. Your body count matters to all men and women. Body counts matter.
It does.
Do you think body count matters more to men or to women?
Doesn't matter.
Okay, so then once again, why does the past not matter, but the past does matter? Why does history matter when it comes to like women's rights?
Because it should. I'm not being funny. When I'm standing there with a man or my bloke, and next minute it's like, I had sex with that person. Well, hang on, you told me you had sex with 5 people. So now I'm on the 10th person that you're counting. So it does matter.
But I'm saying your personal history doesn't matter, but the history does matter when it comes to women's rights.
Well, we're women. We're complicated people.
Oh, man. No, I like this episode. This was a very good video, good discussion. These women answered pretty good. Like, they had some pretty solid answers. They've actually thought about some of their answers too. So the grudge thing and the letting things go, I would suggest to most men, if you can, do. If you can't, try your best. Trust me, I'm trying. Like, I think about it every day, but when I think about my mom and I think about her, it's just like upsetting to me. So please like and subscribe down below. I'd really appreciate that, and I'll catch you guys next time. It's Chow Time.